The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a sound like thunder. Admiral Park Min-ho walked forward, his boots clicking against the strange purple metal floor. Behind him, diplomat Kim Nari followed, her face calm but her hands slightly shaking. They had traveled 3 months through space to reach this moment. Now they stood in the center of the most powerful government in the galaxy. The chamber was enormous. Curved walls stretched up so high that the ceiling disappeared into darkness. Thousands of alien beings sat in rows that formed a perfect circle around the center floor. Some looked like giant insects with too many arms. Others were made of what seemed like living crystal that sparkled in the dim light. A few appeared to be clouds of gas held together by metal frameworks. Park Min-ho had seen pictures of this place before, but being here felt different. The air smelled like ozone and something sweet that made his nose itch. Strange sounds echoed from the walls, clicking, humming, and noises that human ears were not made to understand. The gravity felt slightly wrong, making each step require a little more effort than normal. "Humans of Earth," a voice boomed through the chamber. The sound came from everywhere at once, translated into perfect English by machines the humans could not see. "You stand before the Galactic Council. We have called you here to discuss your future." Park Min-ho looked up at the speaker. It was a Zenthari, one of the founding races of the council. The being stood 12 feet tall, its body made of blue-white crystal that pulsed with inner light. Where a face should be, geometric patterns shifted and changed. 2 other Zenthari flanked it on either side. "We are honored to be here," Kim Nari said, her voice steady despite the circumstances. She had practiced this speech 100 times during their journey. "Earth hopes for peaceful relations with all members of the council." A sound like static filled the air. It took Park Min-ho a moment to realize that thousands of alien beings were laughing. The noise was harsh and grating, nothing like human laughter. It went on for several minutes before the Zenthari speaker raised one crystalline arm for silence. "Peaceful relations," the speaker repeated. "How amusing. Tell us, little humans, what do you know of peace?" Park Min-ho felt his jaw tighten. He had expected this kind of treatment, but it still made his blood boil. "We know enough," he said carefully. "Earth has been at peace for over 50 years. We have eliminated war, hunger, and most diseases. Our people work together to build a better world." More static laughter filled the chamber. This time it was louder and lasted longer. Some of the alien beings began making sounds that might have been words in their own languages. The noise was overwhelming. "Silence," the Zenthari commanded, and the chamber instantly became quiet. "Humans, you misunderstand your situation. You speak of peace on one small world. We speak of peace across 50,000 star systems. You have been in space for less than 200 years. We have maintained order in this galaxy for 10,000 years. The being's crystal body pulsed brighter. Your species is young and foolish. You do not understand the responsibility of maintaining galactic civilization. This is why the Council has decided to take direct control of human space." Kim Nari stepped forward. "What exactly does that mean?" Another Zenthari answered, its voice somehow different from the first despite coming through the same translation system. "It means that Earth and all human colonies will now be under Council protection. You will be given guidelines for your continued existence." "Guidelines?" Park Min-ho asked. The first Zenthari gestured and a holographic display appeared in the air above them. Numbers and symbols floated in 3-dimensional space, constantly shifting and changing. "Earth will provide 70% of all mined resources to the Council for redistribution to more advanced species. All military installations will be dismantled immediately. Human space travel will be limited to designated shipping lanes under Council supervision." Park Min-ho stared at the display, his mind racing. These were not guidelines. This was complete surrender. "And if we refuse?" The chamber fell completely silent. Even the background humming of alien technology stopped. The moment stretched on until Park Min-ho could hear his own heartbeat. "Refusal is not an option available to primitive species," the Zenthari said finally. "Other races have tried to resist Council authority. Their planets are now asteroid fields that serve as reminders of the cost of defiance." Kim Nari's face had gone pale, but her voice remained steady. "We request time to consider your proposal and discuss it with our government." "There is nothing to consider," a new voice said. This speaker was a Vortani, a species that looked like a cross between a lizard and a bird. Its scaled head turned toward the humans with predatory interest. "The Council has decided. You have 30 Earth days to begin implementation. Compliance fleets are already moving toward your space to ensure cooperation. Park Min-ho felt something cold settle in his stomach. Compliance fleets? Standard procedure, the Zenthari explained as if discussing the weather. 300 ships to monitor your compliance with council directives. They will remain in your system permanently to prevent any unfortunate misunderstandings about your new status. From his position on the chamber floor, Park Min-ho could see thousands of alien faces looking down at him. Some showed what might have been amusement. Others displayed nothing he could recognize as emotion. All of them seemed to view humans as nothing more than another primitive species to be controlled. This is not negotiable, another council member added. This one appeared to be made of flowing metal that constantly reshaped itself. Your species will learn to accept its place in the galactic order, just as hundreds of others have before you. Kim Nari tried one more time. Perhaps we could discuss alternative arrangements. Earth has technologies and resources that might be valuable to the Council in other ways. The laughter started again, but this time it had an edge of contempt that made Park Min-ho's hands clench into fists. The Zenthari speaker waited for quiet before responding. Humans, you have nothing that advanced species need. Your technology is primitive. Your science is barely adequate. Your culture is violent and chaotic. The only value your species has is as a source of basic labor and raw materials. The being's crystal form pulsed brighter. The Council has shown remarkable patience in allowing your species to develop this far without guidance. That patience has now ended. You will comply with our directives, or you will be removed as an obstacle to galactic peace. Park Min-ho and Kim Nari exchanged a look. They had hoped for many possible outcomes from this meeting, but this total dismissal had been the worst-case scenario. Still, they had prepared for it. We understand your position, Park Min-ho said slowly. We will return to Earth and deliver your message to our government. Excellent, the Zenthari said. Your transport has been prepared for immediate departure. Remember, 30 days. Compliance fleets are already moving. As the massive doors began to open again, Park Min-ho heard one final comment from somewhere in the chamber. At least this species knows when it is beaten. That will make the transition easier for everyone. The two humans walked out of the chamber in silence, their footsteps echoing in the vast corridor beyond. Behind them, the sounds of alien conversation resumed, but Park Min-ho no longer cared what they were saying. They had their answer. Now Earth would have to decide what to do with it. 3,000 feet beneath the Gobi Desert, Dr. Song Ji-won stood before the largest screen she had ever seen. The display showed a map of human space with red dots marking every known alien ship. There were hundreds of them, all moving toward Earth and its colonies. The Galactic Council had not been bluffing about their compliance fleets. How long do we have? Asked Captain Choi Hyun-woo as he entered the command center. His uniform was different from the standard Earth military design. Instead of bright colors and metal badges, it was matte black with no markings at all. 18 days until the first ships reach Mars, Dr. Song replied without looking away from the screen. 22 days until they reach Earth orbit. Choi Hyun-woo nodded grimly. Around them, the hidden facility buzzed with activity. Hundreds of technicians worked at stations that looked like nothing any alien species had ever seen. The technology was clearly advanced, but it had a rough, improvised quality that spoke of human engineering. Is Project Prometheus ready? He asked. Dr. Song finally turned from the screen. Her eyes were tired but determined. She had been working on this project for 15 years, ever since Earth's first peaceful contact with aliens had revealed the true nature of galactic politics. As ready as we can make it. The question is whether it will be enough. Deep in the facility's manufacturing section, Major Shin Yeji watched the final assembly of humanity's secret weapon. The ships being built here looked nothing like the sleek vessels shown in Earth's public space program. These were angular, brutal-looking craft covered in sensors and weapons that bent space-time itself. The stealth systems are working perfectly, reported one of her engineers. We tested the prototype yesterday. The ship became completely invisible to every scanning method we know about. Even gravity sensors could not detect it. Shin Yeji smiled coldly. Good. What about the chaos field generators? All functional. When activated, they will make our targeting completely unpredictable. Enemy computers will not be able to calculate where our weapons will hit. The chaos field generators were humanity's answer to the aliens' perfect military formations. For thousands of years, galactic warfare had been conducted like a giant chess game. Ships moved in precise patterns, Following mathematical rules that made battles predictable and controllable, humans had decided to throw out the rules entirely. In another section of the facility, General Bei Junsu studied reports from across the galaxy. For 50 years, Earth's intelligence services had been placing agents throughout alien space, not as spies in the traditional sense, but as helpers and friends to oppressed species. Status report from the Kalani system, said one of his officers. Our medical teams have successfully treated the plague that was killing their children. They are asking what they can do to help us. The thorax mining colonies report similar gratitude, added another officer. We provided them with safety equipment that reduced their death rate by 90%. They want to know how they can repay the favor. General Bei had always believed that the best way to defeat an empire was to make friends with everyone the empire had hurt. The Galactic Council ruled through fear and neglect. Earth had chosen to rule through kindness and competence. Send activation signals to all sleeper cells, he ordered. It is time for our friends to know what we really need from them. Back in the main command center, Admiral Park Min-ho had returned from his meeting with the Galactic Council. His face showed the strain of the long journey, but his eyes were hard with determination. They gave us exactly the response we expected, he reported to the assembled commanders. Complete surrender or total destruction. No negotiation, no compromise, no respect. Did they suspect anything about our preparations? Asked Dr. Song. Park Min-ho shook his head. They see us exactly as we wanted them to see us. A young, primitive species with crude technology and no real military capability. They have no idea what we have been building down here. The Admiral walked to the large display showing alien ship movements. They are sending 300 ships to enforce compliance. Against any normal human military force, that would be massive overkill. Against what we have built here, it might not be enough. Captain Choi Hyunwoo stepped forward. My stealth squadron is ready for deployment. We have 12 ships that can appear anywhere in the solar system without warning. Each one carries enough firepower to destroy a city. My Chaos fighters are also ready, added Major Shin Yeji. 47 ships designed to break every rule of space combat. They will not know how to fight us because we will not fight like anyone they have ever faced. General Bei consulted his tablet. Intelligence reports that 17 different alien species are ready to provide support when we give the signal. They have been waiting decades for someone to stand up to the Council. Dr. Song pulled up another display showing Earth's defensive systems. The planetary shields are at full power. Our ground-based weapons can target ships anywhere in the solar system. Every major city has been moved to underground locations that can survive orbital bombardment. Admiral Park studied the displays for several minutes before speaking. The Council thinks they are dealing with a primitive species that will surrender when faced with superior force. They have no idea that we have been preparing for this day since first contact. What about civilian populations? Asked one of the junior officers. If we fight back, the aliens might target Earth cities. Already handled, replied Dr. Song. Every human colony has underground shelters that can survive anything short of planetary destruction. Food, water, and air supplies for 6 months minimum. If this turns into a long war, our people will be safe. Admiral Park nodded approvingly. The Council rules through intimidation. They threaten to destroy planets to make species comply, but you cannot intimidate people who are not afraid to die for their freedom. As if summoned by his words, a communication alert sounded throughout the facility. The main screen switched to show a message from Luna Station, where Commander Lee Doha was monitoring alien ship movements. Admiral, we are detecting the first Council ships entering the outer solar system. They are moving in standard formation. No apparent concern about resistance. Estimated time to Mars orbit is now 16 days. Admiral Park looked around at his commanders. These people had spent their entire careers preparing for this moment. Earth's greatest minds had worked in secret to build weapons and defenses that no alien species would expect from a primitive world. Begin Phase 1 deployment, he ordered. Move all stealth ships to attack positions. Activate chaos field generators. Send the signal to our allies across the galaxy. As alarms began to sound throughout the facility, thousands of people moved to their battle stations. In hidden bases across the solar system, ships that existed in no official records powered up their engines. On distant worlds, alien species who had suffered under Council rule received coded messages telling them that the time for hiding was over. The Galactic Council expected to find a helpless species ready to surrender. Instead, they were about to discover that humanity had spent 50 years preparing to turn their perfect galactic order into chaos. Admiral Kim Sun-ho sat in the command chair of the stealth ship Silent Thunder. Around him, his crew worked at stations that made no sound except for the soft breathing of the operators. Every system on the ship was designed to be completely invisible to alien sensors. "Target acquired," whispered his weapons officer. "Council command ship Eternal Glory, 300 kilometers ahead. They have no idea we are here." Through the view screen, Kim Sun-ho could see the alien fleet arranged in perfect formation. Thousands of ships moved through space like a giant dance, each vessel exactly where galactic military science said it should be. The formation was beautiful, precise, and completely predictable. "Are the other stealth ships in position?" he asked quietly. "All 12 ships report ready for attack," came the reply. "Captain Choi Hyunwoo's ship is targeting their communications array. Major Park Soo-jin has locked onto their main engines." Kim Sun-ho studied the enemy formation. These aliens had conquered hundreds of worlds using the same tactics for thousands of years. They expected enemies to fight like civilized beings, following the ancient rules of galactic warfare. They were about to learn that humans did not follow anyone's rules. "Begin. Attack sequence," he ordered. The first sign of trouble for the Galactic Council fleet was when their communications simply stopped working. One moment the command ship was receiving reports from 300 vessels. The next moment there was only silence. Admiral Kelthera, the Zenthari fleet commander, stared at her control screens in confusion. "Communications, report status." "All external communications are down," replied her officer. "Internal systems are also experiencing problems. I cannot identify the cause." Before Kelthera could respond, explosions began lighting up the space around her command ship. But these were not normal explosions. They appeared randomly throughout the fleet, with no visible source. Ships simply began exploding without any sign of enemy weapons fire. "Tactical analysis," Kelthera demanded. "I cannot provide analysis," her tactical officer replied, his crystal form pulsing with distress. "Our sensors detect no enemy ships. No weapon signatures. No indication of attack. But 17 of our vessels have been destroyed in the last 60 seconds. On the bridge of Silent Thunder, Kim Sun-ho watched with satisfaction as the alien fleet began to panic. Human stealth technology did not just hide ships from sensors, it made them completely undetectable, as if they did not exist at all. "Target their flagship engines," he ordered. "Let us give them something to really worry about." The Eternal Glory shuddered as invisible weapons tore through its propulsion systems. Emergency alarms filled the ship as Zenthari crew members tried to understand what was happening to them. "We are under attack," Kelthera announced to her fleet. "All ships defensive formation 7. Begin random evasive maneuvers." But defensive formations required communication between ships, and the human attack had destroyed all their communication systems. Random evasive maneuvers required coordination, and coordination was impossible. When no ship could talk to any other ship, the perfect alien formation began to fall apart as individual captains made their own decisions about how to respond to the invisible threat. Ships collided with each other as they tried to change positions without knowing where other ships were moving. 200 light-years away, Lieutenant Colonel Park Sori was preparing to execute the most dangerous part of the human battle plan. Her ship, Chaosbringer, was much smaller than the alien vessels, but it carried a weapon that no alien military planner had ever imagined. "Gravitational mining charges are ready," reported her engineering officer. "All safety protocols have been disabled as ordered." Park Sori looked at her crew. They all knew this might be a one-way mission. The weapon they were about to use had never been tested at full power because testing it would have destroyed whatever solar system they tried it in. "Target the council staging area at Kepler Station," she ordered. "Set charges for maximum disruption." The mining charges were originally designed to break apart asteroids for easier resource collection. Human engineers had modified them to work on a much larger scale. Instead of destroying rocks, they would temporarily disrupt the gravitational field around an entire space station. "Charges deployed," announced the engineering officer. "Gravitational field collapse in 10 seconds. Through her view screen, Park Sori could see Kepler Station. It was a massive structure, home to 50,000 alien military personnel and 300 support ships. In 5 seconds, all of that would be gone. The gravitational collapse began as a small distortion in space-time. Then it grew, pulling everything nearby toward a single point. The space station, designed to resist normal weapons, had no defense against the fundamental forces of the universe turning against it. Successful deployment, Park Sori reported to Fleet Command. Kepler Station and all support vessels destroyed. No survivors detected. Back at Admiral Kim Sun-ho's position, the alien fleet was now in complete chaos, without communications, without coordination, and under attack by enemies they could not see or fight. The once perfect formation had become a scattered mess of panicking ships. "Sir," reported his sensor officer, "we are detecting emergency retreat signals from multiple alien vessels. They are trying to escape the system. Let some of them go," Kim Sun-ho ordered. "We want survivors to report what happened here. The Council needs to know that humanity is not defenseless." As human stealth ships continued their invisible assault, news of the attack began to spread through the galaxy. On dozens of worlds that the Council had conquered, oppressed species received the message they had been waiting for. The humans were fighting back. On the mining world of Kepler 442b, the thorax workers who had been helped by human medical teams suddenly stopped their mining operations. Instead, they began sabotaging the equipment that extracted resources for the Council. In the Kalani system, former plague victims used human-provided technology to jam Council communications throughout their sector. The aliens who had ignored their suffering for decades suddenly found themselves cut off from their command structure. On Vega Prime, the rebellion began when every communication device in the capital city simultaneously broadcast the same message. "The humans have shown us that the Council can be defeated. Today we stop being slaves." In the depths of space, Admiral Kim Sun-ho received reports from across the galaxy. Species that had been conquered centuries ago were rising up against their alien overlords. The network of goodwill that humanity had built through decades of quiet assistance was finally paying off. "Signal from Earth Command," announced his communications officer. "Admiral Park Min-ho reports that Phase 1 objectives have been achieved. We are to proceed to Phase 2 positions." Kim Sun-ho smiled grimly. Phase 1 had been about proving that humans could fight. Phase 2 would be about proving that humans could win. As the Silent Thunder and its sister ships vanished back into the darkness of space, the survivors of the Galactic Council fleet tried to understand what had happened to them. They had come to Earth expecting to intimidate a primitive species into submission. Instead, they had encountered an enemy that fought like no civilized being ever had. The perfect order that the Council had maintained for 10,000 years was beginning to crack. And humanity was just getting started. Ambassador Yang Mirai stood in a hidden broadcast station on the planet Rigel 7, watching as her message spread across the galaxy. For the first time in galactic history, every communication device in Council space was receiving the same transmission at the same time. "Citizens of the galaxy," she began, her voice calm but powerful. "For 10,000 years you have been told that the Galactic Council protects you. Today, I will show you the truth they have hidden." Behind her, holographic displays began showing documents that Earth's intelligence network had gathered over 50 years. Financial records, military reports, and private communications between Council members. All of it painted the same picture of systematic oppression and exploitation. "The Vortani plague that killed millions of your children was not natural," Yang Mirai continued. "Council records show it was created in their laboratories to reduce population on worlds that were becoming too crowded for efficient resource extraction. On Vortax Prime, millions of lizard-like beings stopped their daily activities to watch the broadcast. They had lost nearly half their children to the plague 5 years ago. The Council had told them it was unfortunate but unavoidable. Now they were learning it was deliberate murder. The food shortages on agricultural worlds are artificial, Yang Mirai revealed. The Council takes 90% of all food production and sells it to wealthy core worlds, leaving farming communities to starve. Fleet Admiral Ro Dae-sung commanded the largest human military operation in history from his flagship Indomitable Spirit. 3 separate fleets were carrying out coordinated attacks across 100 different star systems. But unlike traditional military campaigns, only one fleet was actually fighting the Council's military forces. "Status report from Liberation Fleet," announced his communications officer. "They have successfully delivered weapons and training materials to rebel groups on 47 worlds. Resistance movements report they are ready for coordinated uprising. Evacuation Fleet reports successful extraction of civilian populations from 18 contested systems. added another officer. All refugee ships are en route to safe zones behind our defensive lines. Rodesung nodded with satisfaction. Humans had learned from studying other galactic conflicts that the side that protected innocent lives usually won in the end. While the Council focused on military targets, humanity was focused on saving people. "What is the status of Strike Fleet?" he asked. Admiral Kim Sunho reports successful penetration of Council defensive lines. His stealth ships have eliminated 3 major supply depots and disabled the command station at Arcturus. Enemy forces in that sector are completely cut off from reinforcements. The third prong of humanity's strategy was the most important. While Liberation Fleet armed rebels and Evacuation Fleet saved civilians, Strike Fleet attacked the Council's ability to coordinate their response. Without communications and supplies, even the most powerful military became helpless. On the Council homeworld of Zenthari Prime, emergency sessions had been called for 3 days straight. The crystal beings that had ruled the galaxy for millennia were experiencing something they had not felt in thousands of years. Fear, the human, attacks are impossible to predict or counter, reported military commander Zelkaran. Their ships appear from nowhere, strike our most vital installations, then vanish before we can respond. Our forces cannot fight enemies we cannot detect. More concerning are the uprisings, added Intelligence Director Morfak. 17 species have declared independence from Council authority. They are using human-supplied weapons and tactics that our forces are not trained to handle. High Counselor Nexarian's crystal form pulsed with angry light. These humans are disrupting 10,000 years of galactic order. How can one primitive species cause so much chaos? They are not fighting like a primitive species, Morfak replied. Their technology is more advanced than ours in key areas. Their strategy shows understanding of galactic politics that should have taken centuries to develop. Most importantly, they have turned our own subjects against us. Captain Lee Sujin piloted her deep strike vessel Shadow Walker through the most heavily defended space in the galaxy. Her mission was the most dangerous of the entire human campaign. Infiltrate the Council's central command structure and broadcast evidence of their crimes to every connected world simultaneously. Approaching the inner defense perimeter, whispered her pilot. 1,500 enemy ships between us and the target. Maintain stealth field at maximum power, Lee Sujin ordered. One mistake and this mission is over. The Shadow Walker had been designed specifically for this type of operation. Instead of weapons, it carried the most powerful communication array humanity had ever built. If they could get close enough to the Council's central data network, they could broadcast to every device in galactic civilization. Defense grid passed, reported her sensor officer. We are now inside the most secure space in Council territory. Still no detection. Through her view screen, Lee Sujin could see the massive structure that served as the Council's central command. It was an artificial planet covered in communication towers and data processing centers. Every piece of information in galactic civilization eventually passed through this facility. Beginning data tap, announced her technical officer. Full access to Council Central databases achieved. Download beginning now. As terabytes of classified information flowed into the ship's computers, Lee Sujin watched the defense fleet that surrounded them. Thousands of alien ships patrolled in perfect formation, completely unaware that their most secure facility had been compromised. Download complete, her officer reported. We now have complete records of Council activities for the past 1,000 years. Everything is here. The engineered plagues, the artificial famines, the genocide of species that refuse to comply. Begin broadcast, Lee Sujin ordered. Send it to every communication device in the galaxy. Across 100,000 worlds, beings of every species stopped what they were doing to watch the evidence that humanity had gathered. The Council's own records showed a pattern of cruelty and exploitation that went back centuries. On Kalani, the cat-like beings who had lost millions to plague discovered that the Council had cure all along, but had chosen not to use it. On Thorax, the insect workers learned that their dangerous mining operations were unnecessary. The Council had safer methods, but preferred to use expendable labor. Most shocking of all were the Council's own discussions about humanity. Private communications showed that they had known about Earth's military preparations for years, but had chosen not to act because they enjoyed the idea of crushing a species that thought it could resist them. The humans represent everything wrong with unguided evolution, one council member had written. Their destruction will serve as a lesson to other species about the consequences of independence. Blatt. Admiral Ro Daisung received reports from across the galaxy as Yang. Mirai's broadcast continued, and Li Sujin's evidence spread through every communication network. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Rebellion reports coming in from every sector, his communications officer announced. The Kalani have declared independence and are attacking council installations in their system. The Thorax workers have seized control of their mining operations. Even some Vortani military units are refusing orders from council command. What about council military response? Ro Daesung asked. Confused and uncoordinated, came the reply. They are trying to respond to uprisings on hundreds of worlds while dealing with our continuing attacks. Their forces are spread too thin to be effective anywhere. Ro Daesung allowed himself a small smile. Humanity's greatest weapon had never been their technology or their military tactics. It had been their ability to inspire others to fight for freedom. After 10,000 years of oppression, the galaxy was finally fighting back. Signal all fleets, he ordered. Begin Phase 3 operations. It is time to end the Council's reign. President Kang Yunbi walked into the same chamber, where Admiral Park Min-ho and Kim Nari had been dismissed and threatened just 2 years earlier. But everything had changed. The curved walls that once held thousands of alien representatives now hosted delegates from dozens of formerly oppressed worlds. The Kalani sat next to the Thorax. Former enemies worked together to build something new. The remaining council members sat in a small section, their numbers reduced from thousands to barely 100. High Councilor Nexarian's crystal form had lost its bright glow and now appeared dim and cracked. The being that had once dismissed humanity as primitive now looked defeated and old. The Galactic Council as it existed for 10,000 years is finished, President Kang announced to the chamber. Her voice carried clearly through the translation systems. But now those systems served everyone equally instead of just the Council's chosen species. In its place, we propose the Galactic Democratic Federation. Every species, every world, every settlement will have an equal voice in decisions that affect them. No more will one group of beings decide the fate of others without their consent. Admiral Park Min-ho, now wearing the insignia of the new Federation Defense Force, stood beside her. His hair had turned gray during the 2-year conflict, but his eyes showed the satisfaction of a job completed. The age of rule through fear is over. We offer the former council members the same choice we have offered to every other species. Join us as equals, or live peacefully on your own worlds without trying to control others. High Councilor Nexarian's form pulsed weakly. You cannot maintain order across the galaxy without authority. Chaos will return. Species will fight each other without our guidance. Your guidance caused more wars than it prevented, replied Kalani Ambassador Whisperwind, her cat-like features showing disdain. My people lived in peace for centuries before you arrived. It was council policies that created the conflicts you claim to have solved. The chamber filled with agreement from dozens of other species. The Thorax delegate clicked his mandibles in their equivalent of laughter. The great protectors who created plagues to kill our children speak of preventing chaos. Your kind of order we do not need. President Kang raised her hand for silence. The question now is not about the past, but about the future. We have a galaxy to rebuild and wounds to heal. This will require cooperation from everyone, including those who once ruled through force. Dr. Song Jiwon entered the chamber carrying a data tablet. Her role had changed from secret weapons designer to chief of the new Galactic Reconstruction Initiative. I have the latest reports from our healing projects, she announced. The large display screens around the chamber lit up with images from across the galaxy. On Kalani, human medical teams worked alongside local doctors to treat the lingering effects of the engineered plague. On Thorax mining worlds, new safety equipment had reduced workplace deaths to nearly zero. The Vortani homeworld has been declared plague-free, Dr. Song reported. The last infected areas were cleared 3 days ago using treatments developed by combined human and Kalani research teams. Even some of the remaining council members showed signs of surprise. They had believed the plague was incurable. In their minds, they had been conducting necessary population control, not genocide. Learning that a cure had been possible all along seemed to shake their confidence in their own decisions. Food production on agricultural worlds has increased by 300%, Dr. Song continued. When we stopped shipping 90% of crops to wealthy core worlds, and instead focused on feeding the people who grew them. Starvation ended on 47 planets. Captain Choi Hyunwoo, now Admiral Choi, commanded the new Federation defense fleet from his flagship. Unlike the old Council fleets that existed to intimidate and conquer, his ships were designed to protect and explore. The weapons that had once been hidden now served openly as guardians of peace. Federation Defense Fleet Status Report, he announced to the chamber. All former conflict zones are now peaceful. The Rigel sector trade disputes have been resolved through negotiation. The Centauri border conflicts ended when both sides agreed to shared mining rights. Most importantly, Admiral Choi continued, we have received requests from 12 new species for contact and possible membership in the Federation. They are civilizations that hid themselves during Council rule, but are now willing to reveal themselves to a galaxy governed by cooperation instead of conquest. General Bae Junsu, now Director of Galactic Intelligence, provided the final report. Our network of cooperative relationships now includes over 400 species across the galaxy. Former enemies are becoming allies. Trade between worlds has increased by 500%. Scientific cooperation has led to breakthrough discoveries that benefit everyone. High Counselor Nexarian spoke again, his voice barely audible through the translation system. How long will this peace last? When resources become scarce, when populations grow too large, when conflicts arise, species will return to war. Only strong central authority can prevent this. President Kang walked closer to the Council section. Counselor, your authority created the very problems you claim to have prevented. When you controlled who could have food, you created starvation. When you decided which species could expand, you created territorial conflicts. When you engineered plagues to control population, you created hatred that lasted generations. She gestured toward the diverse assembly around them. These beings are not fighting each other now because they have what they need. They have food, they have safe places to live, they have the freedom to make their own choices. Most importantly, they have hope for a better future. Engineer Jo Min-seok entered the chamber with a group of mixed-species technicians. His team had been working on the most ambitious project in galactic history, the restoration of worlds that the Council had destroyed as examples to others. The new Alderaan project is complete, he announced. We have successfully restored atmosphere and climate to the world that was sterilized 400 years ago as a warning to rebels. The first settlers will arrive next month. The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew about Alderaan, a peaceful world that had asked for independence and been destroyed to teach other species not to make similar requests. For centuries, its dead surface had served as a reminder of the Council's power. How is this possible? Asked one of the remaining Council members. When you use technology to create life instead of destroy it, amazing things become possible, Jo Min-seok replied. We estimate that 12 other dead worlds can be restored using similar methods. Millions of beings will have new homes on planets their ancestors thought were lost forever. As the session continued, more reports arrived from across the galaxy. Art and music were flourishing as species shared their cultures freely. Scientific discoveries were accelerating as researchers from different worlds worked together. Children from dozens of species were learning together in integrated schools, building friendships that would prevent future conflicts. President Kang looked around the chamber at the assembly that represented the new galactic order. Humans sat next to beings they had once fought. Former enemies worked together on projects that would benefit everyone. It was not perfect. Nothing involving so many different species could be. But it was something the galaxy had not seen in 10,000 years. Hope. The Council ruled through fear for 100 centuries, she said in closing. The Federation will lead through hope for however long the galaxy allows us to serve. We are not your rulers. We are your partners in building a future where every being can live free from fear, hunger, and oppression. As the session ended and delegates began to leave, High Counselor Nexarian approached President Kang. His crystal form was dim but steady. Perhaps, he said quietly, we were wrong about your species. President Kang smiled. You are wrong about every species, Counselor. The capacity for greatness exists in all of us. You just never gave anyone the chance to show it. Outside the chamber, ships from 100 different worlds waited to carry their delegates home, but they were not the same beings who had arrived. They were representatives of a new galactic civilization, one built on cooperation instead of conquest, hope instead of fear, and the simple idea that all beings deserved the chance to determine their own destiny.